going to facilitate a discussion on the language of hate. And Traci's done a lot of work in spoken word and language isms. She did a piece last year on all the isms in the world to a lot of critical review on campus. So she's going to facilitate this evening. She's the one who put us in this position of actually getting close to each other and sitting around one another. So
it's about to get uncomfortable.
So we'll see how pushy she's going to get.
Right. And I realize that we may actually have to spread out more or add 2 more tables.
And date thinking.
So I'm going to ask the community, do you suggest that we add 2 more tables with the idea that more people may come? I know I'm still waiting for 2 specific.
I know 2 that are coming that I invited as well.
So it sounds like we're going to add 2 more tables.
Okay. So
this is what I'm Traci. See my picture here? I don't quite look like her. So this is the thing. When Donna and I talked about what the topic was, and then she talked about the language of hate. Over a course or over a period of time, I had been thinking about a plan. I identify as an artist activist. Okay. I identify myself as an artist activist. I teach at the university, and so that's kind of one of the roles or the hats that I wear. Keeping that in mind, language is very intentional for me because as a spoken word artist, that means I have to use words, right? And I have to arrange them and I have to consider my audience. And so in this dialogue about language of hate, I think it's very intentional and interesting that it happens, of course, after what? The election.
Yeah, boy.
And because of that, I realized that this does not need to be a lecture. I don't even have that kind of energy. But it needs to be a community talk. I'm very big on voices, where people have the opportunity to voice themselves, share their stories, share their views. And that's part 1 on one side. The other side of the coin, or the other side of the street, is active listening. I'm not too sure if we always do that, right? And so that's what this dialogue is that in many ways I wanted to play the role as one facilitator, but I don't always have an opportunity to be a student. And so I also want to be a student in this space so that I can listen to people's stories. I specifically asked roughly about 5 to 6 people to come and be a part of what I'm going to say it was originally called a panel, but I called on about 5 people because I know their hearts. I know who they are. I know what they represent. I've been watching them for years. I know the language that they use and how intentional they are about the language. So when we talk about the language of hate, and if there's an opposition to the language of hate, I wanted them around the table sharing their thoughts about that conversation and that topic. With me saying that, let me also say that it's not just them having this talk. It makes sense for us to be around this communal space and that it looks exactly like this, with the notion that people keep on saying the word unity right now more than ever, right? And so that means that all voices should be at the table sharing their story. So just to jumpstart this language of hate, I wanted to give just a working definition from my point of view of what language is. And then I also want to just introduce and say the names of the people whom I specifically ask them to share, a little bit about themselves as well as how they define language. And then we're gonna just jump into questions. I think what more than anything else, me telling you or sharing with you about the language of hate, I think it's important for a question to be thrown out into the air or into the universe, and then we talk about it, because that will set the tone for everything else, which will be automatic. I think everything happens for a reason. At least that's how I operate. So language, just basic Wikipedia definition, right? Language, structural system of words that people use to express themselves. But in that, it's also structure and a system of words and symbols that people also use to express themselves. So words is the most obvious thing because when we talk, words are coming out of my mouth. But if I wear a cross and it represents a symbol, and you sit across from me and you don't identify with that specific symbol, but it may mean something totally different to you, then that's language, right? And depending on what side of the street you sit on, that may be language of hate, in which we have to define hate, of course. Language of love, language of assimilation, language of you look suspect to me. So that means that I'm also saying that not only the words that come out of my mouth mean something, but you sizing me up, this, my hair, the glasses that I wear, the clothes and the way I wear my clothes, my voice is very much so about the language of, and you can finish it off. That's where I'm going to stop. The people that I asked to come, and I'm assuming the others will come, but I asked for Delma Thomas Jackson to share, and Delma will say something in a few. I just want to say the names, and I'm going to tell the names based off of how I know them, and then when they share, they will tell you their whole name or whatever their nickname is, or however their full name is. And they'll go from there. Dr. P, Donna Ulrich, Claire Blakely, Linda Samara, and Dr. Rishika Patel is not here as of yet. So if maybe the people that I said your names, if you could just share, a minute of who you are, your understanding of language, and who you are is also place yourself so that people can have an idea of your foundation in terms of this relationship with language. And then after we do that, we're going to move forward and continue to talk as a community. Is that okay? Okay. So whomever wants to start first. I mean, I was looking at Delma. Delma's next to me. Now I'm looking at Dr.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Your name is?
Like I said, like Dr. Currie said, my name is Delma Thomas Jackson. I wear a few different hats, but I think as it pertains to this work specifically, the bulk of my work revolves around social justice, whether that's through writing, facilitation, lecturing, or what have you, organizing occasionally. As a student of people, as a student of social justice, as a student of hip hop, language for me is, I think, symbol is the word that tends to come up for me a lot, in part just to kind of get away from thinking of it strictly as verbal. As you already stated, Dr. Currie, I think language and communication in general take a variety of forms. And I think we've all had the experience of someone's words not necessarily matching some of the other symbols coming with those words. And so to me, that's always a fascinating juxtaposition. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think I have a very, I wouldn't say unique relationship with language, but to me, language is contextual, definitely. Language is living. And so I'm always interested in having conversations about how certain words land on folks, how that looks across different generations, different ethnicities, so on and so forth. So thank you for having me, and I'll end there.
I'm Donna Ulrich.
Okay.
I work for the University of Michigan, Flint. I'm a communications faculty member along with Traci. My background is in journalism and speech communications. I have a degree in theater and journalism and public relations and law. And I'm a writer, and I teach writing, and I have loved words since I was, I don't know how old. My mom got us our library passes, and that was it. And I remember waiting patiently for my dad to finish the newspaper when I was in middle school, because I couldn't read the newspaper until he had read the newspaper. So journalism is my passion. Nonfiction writing is my passion, and I love teaching it. I think teaching students to use the language is more my medium than writing it myself. And I think my place and my foundation here really is to think about the media and its use of language and whether it is doing us justice or not in its responsibility to report what's going on around us. The language it chooses to misrepresent or mislead, the omissions that it commits to slant information. That's the kind of language that draws me here tonight. Is that good?
Yes, that's great. So we have Linda and Dr. P.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. P. Joyce Pierce. I go by AKA Dr. P. I don't want to label myself in terms of I am a particular identity, which is language approach, right? We've been trained to identify ourselves, and most specifically is what I do, right? So I'm not going to do that. When I think of a language, I think of energy, vibration, frequency, and that's always the place that I come from. Because if I don't interpret it with certain instruments or tools on my body, then I won't hear. The other thing is, I can hear language, but if I don't step into the agreed collective agreement of the society that I'm living in, you know how that is. If anybody went to a foreign country, if there's a language that's spoken, it's on a whole different vibrational range that you have not grown up in, you haven't come to the agreement that, that sound means a particular something. So I believe that, as Delma said, it's very much contextual. But it is also, as Traci said, everything that you do, language is in the silence. In fact, everybody close your eyes and listen to me speak. If you are attuned to my vibration, then you heard me. And what you heard was love, because that was my intent. Language is in the silence. Language is in when you're reading, language is in the spaces between the letters. There's a lot that's being said. The problem is that we have not been attuned, and we've not been trained to be attuned to that which is said. And so language is it's in everything. I don't know what's not language.
That was a poem. Linda, a poet.
Hello, everyone. Hello. My name is Linda Samara, and I am a student at the University of Michigan Flint. I've been Dr. Currie and Dr. Albert's student before, and I love communications, which is why I'm talking about language today. But I'm an Arab American, and I was raised in a Muslim family. My parents are both immigrants. They immigrated from Jordan. So language has definitely been a big thing in my life, and I believe that language kind of constructs your reality. So I've always lived in two different realities with English and Arabic, and like you were saying, Dr. P, I mean, if you go to another country, language is different, and you feel something different. There's totally different vibrations, as you say, but yeah, it's definitely given me very different experiences living with that dual identity. I think language is a tool that can give you power, or it can take away power from you. I remember growing up and being as a child of immigrants and, you know, being overwhelmed with emotions all the time because of the treatment of my parents in a post 9/11 world, and kind of relating to other students that were, you know, POC or of marginalized communities, and I never had the language or the words to kind of express how I was feeling, and until I got into spaces like this and in, you know, institutions of higher education, I finally got terminology that could express how I felt, and I've also found identity through language. All throughout my life, we're kind of taught to identify ourselves or tell people who and where we come from. Yes, and so on every standardized test, on the census and everything, I'd always have to fill out, you know, who I am. And according to America, Arab Americans are white. But according to Arab Americans, we're not. We're not white. And I've always had a problem filling in the bubble of white because I've never found that white rang true to my experiences. I don't feel like a white person. A lot of my friends that I grew up with in high school wouldn't classify me as white. My experiences are totally different from that. So finding the language to identify myself played a big role in that. And just so everyone knows, there is a movement going on to get Middle Eastern, North African blocks on the census. So, yeah. Thank you all. I'm looking forward to listening to all of your perspectives.
Linda, I believe you used the phrase POC.
Yes.
What does that mean?
People of color.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I should specify.
You know those youngins who change and shorten it.
That is what we do.
So I sense that there's probably a question or so, because I'm reading a little bit of body language, but the other person that I told you who is also that I specifically asked to be here, just in terms of knowing her heart and just watching her and how wonderful she is Dr. Traci Patel. She walked in. So what we're doing is we're taking a minute to kind of give everyone an idea of who you are, you know, how you maybe identify yourself, and what does language mean to you? What is it?
Excuse me for being late. I didn't mean to be rude. My name is Traci Patel. I work at the University of Michigan Flint. I lived in this community for 3 years over here in the College Cultural neighborhood. I live with my children. They're 4 and 6. I grew up in Detroit. I was born in India. I've lived in several different countries. On the question of what is language to me, you know, I came to thinking about language critically as an English as a second language teacher. I taught in Tokyo for a year, and then I moved to Korea, you know, India, and I came back, and I started to think about how much power this English language has to really control whether people can access a job or even feel good about themselves as a moral being in the world. And the relationship between language and power and access, as well as race and gender and class and citizenship, and the privilege of being an American citizen, it just became, I became vividly aware of my privilege as a native U.S. English speaker. And so I come to the U.S., I start getting a master's in linguistics, and I start to, you know, take courses on syntax and phonology and, you know, articulatory features, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if this is what I really was looking for when I wanted to study language. So, you know, I guess when I think about what is language, you know, there's this way of looking at language as a structure with a logic, as separate parts and a syntax, and, you know, but then there's this way of looking at language, and sometimes people try and separate the study of language from the way that language operates in the world. Language to me is something that's used to divide haves and have-nots. It's something that's used, there's a struggle over meaning making in language, you know, in Gujarati, for example, there are probably 15 or 16 different words for love. you know, which is something I appreciate as, you know, somebody who's interested in poetry and the arts. And in other language, there might be different ways of thinking about love and other words, you know, but I think about language as not only a structural phenomenon in terms of its parts, but also a way of thinking about power and meaning and access. And those are some thoughts I'll share.